3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Hello everyone, this is Keith, and thanks for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. Tonight, I'm going to play through War of the Ring from Ares Games using my solo system, Alone in Middle-earth version 3.3. In this playthrough, I'll be using the expansions Lords of Middle-earth and Warriors of Middle-earth, along with the Council of Rivendell optional rules. I'm still on the fence regarding the latest expansion, Kings of Middle-earth. I'm going to watch a few playthrough videos to see how this expansion works, and if it seems fun and adds to the narrative, I'll order it. But for the time being, I'm not 100% certain that this is going to be worth the effort. The Lords of Middle-earth is an absolute must in my opinion, as it not only adds new companions and minions, and their associated dice, but it also includes a deeper set of rules regarding the power of the Elven Rings. In addition, I enjoy the alternate companions rules, along with the ability to start the game outside the Fellowship. The Warriors of Middle-earth expansion is decent, adding in factions such as the Eagles, Ents, Dunlendings, and Corsairs of Umbar. But its implementation is not as smooth as the Lords expansion. This is why I'm a bit skeptical about adding the Kings expansion without doing more research. I've set up the game and randomly determined the status of the Fellowship and their starting locations. After making all the die rolls, it ends up that Strider will be using his alternate form, Dunedain. In this form, his guide ability is if the Fellowship is on step 1 or higher. On the Fellowship track, the first action die used to move the Fellowship in a turn is not added to the hunt box. Place the die in the Fellowship box instead. This die is recovered normally next turn. He also has the abilities Captain of the West and Heir to Isildur. Also, as a part of setup, since we're using the Lords of Middle-earth expansion, we're going to be placing 2 Smeagol tokens in the hunt bag. The game is now set and we're ready to play. We're going to begin with step 1, and we're going to recover action dice and draw our event cards. Free Peoples will be recovering 4 action dice and the Shadow player 7 dice. The Free Peoples player draws the cards I Will Go Alone, Eomer, son of Eomund, and Wraiths of Fear. Then we draw the cards for the Shadowbot, and we'll leave those unrevealed for the time being. Next up is the Fellowship phase, and the Fellowship begin the game in the Elven Fortress of Rivendell. We're going to begin the game with Gandalf the Grey Wanderer, as our guide. Step 3 is our hunt allocation. We're going to consult Table A and roll a d20 to determine the number of dice that the Shadow player will place in the Hunt of the Ring box. There will be one modifier that is active, and that's +1 if the Fellowship is in Rivendell and the Fellowship progress marker is less than 5. The reason for this modifier is to apply a little extra action to the shadow player prior to the time where the fellowship might be able to cross through Moria, which is a very important choke point for us. So that's the reason of the modifier. So we'll make the roll and see what happens. The roll is a 6. That's modified to a 7. So they're going to place one die in the hunt box. And we'll place one eye in the hunt box. Step 4 is our action roll, and we'll roll for the free peoples. All right, they have rolled a Will of the West, a muster, an event, and a character die. So they've got a little bit of everything for the first roll. I'll place those in the frame. I didn't see that. So those are our results from the roll. All right, next up is the shadow player. He'll be rolling 6 dice. One is in the hunt box. All right, and he has acquired 2 eyes, a muster, 2 character die, and a army die. So the 2 eyes will go into the box, and we've got a total of 3 eyes in the hunt box. All right, these are the cards and dice that we have available to us. And I think from a strategy standpoint, we're probably best served to use our event dice first. Because in the event that there would be a casualty when we use our character die to attempt our fellowship progress, if we end up taking Gandalf, we wouldn't be able to use his special ability with the event die. So I think we'll do that. We're going to use the event die, and we're going to play Yomer, son of Yomund. That says recruit 1 Rohan unit, regular or elite, and 1 Rohan leader in a free Rohan region containing a settlement. Okay. And I'm going to select a elite unit and a leader. I'm going to place them in Helm's Deep. All right. So a part of the guide's ability, Gandalf's ability, is after you use an event action die to play an event card, you may immediately draw an event card from the deck matching the type of that card. So let's do that. And he draws the event Riders of Theoden. Okay. And now we're going to move on to the shadow player. The Shadowbot is going to consult table B, Sauron's gaze table, and we're going to determine whether his focus is going to be on military matters or on the hunt for the ring. We're going to make a d20 roll, consulting the table, and apply any modifiers. We're going to get a +1 to the roll for the Fellowship in Rivendell, and the progress marker less than 5. So that'll increase the probability of a hunt for the ring. Here is the roll. We roll a 13, that's modified to a 14, and he is going to do his focus will be centered on the ring. So we're going to consult table E, the ring priority chart, and we will go through those steps and find an action that the Shadowbot is going to select. The first one is use a muster die to bring the Witch King, Chief of the Ring Wraiths, into play. And looking at the prerequisites for the Chief of the Ring Wraiths, it says if the Fellowship is not in an unconquered Free People's stronghold. So we can't do that one. We'll move on to the next priority. That is B, play a character event that will target the Fellowship. Well, let's take a look at our character events that we have available. This one is Isildur's Bane. Play if the Fellowship is not in a region containing a Fellowship People's settlement. So we can't play that card. So we'll go on to our next priority. That says use an action or faction die to play a faction card that targets the Fellowship. Well, let's take a look at our faction card and see if that's a playable card of some kind. And that is the Craft of Shelob. Move spiders up to 2 regions. If the Shelob's Lair special hunt tile has not been entered into play, it is now in play. Add the tile to the hunt pool when the Fellowship is on the mortar track. Well, we can't do that. So, what we will do then is move on to the next priority. That one is if the Fellowship is not in a Free People stronghold, well, they are, so we'll move on to E. If the Fellowship is in a Free People stronghold, play an event die to draw a character event, or use an action die to position Nazgul or armies into regions that are likely to gain future hunt rerolls, and that's what we're going to do. So I think what we'll do is the Shadow player is going to play a character die, and we're going to move some minions around the board and get them in positions that can offer us some hunt rerolls in the future. So the Shadow player is going to play a character die, and we're going to select the Move Minions action. And I think what we'll do is try to position some Nazgul near Rivendell in the fords of Brunnen, High Pass, and possibly Holland. So I think we'll move the Nazgul from Barad-dûr and have him fly to the fords of Brunnen. And I think we will also do the one from Morannon, have him fly from there, and we'll put him into High Pass. That'll be somewhat of a ability to get some rerolls in the future. And that will be the end of the Shadow player's first action. Free People's players up next. We have 3 action dice. The Shadow has 3, so we can't pass. So we'll have to do an action, and I think we'll get the Fellowship moving, and we'll play a character die and a Fellowship progress action. So we'll play the character die, and we're going to advance the Fellowship 1 space on the track, moving them to a progress of 1. But now the Shadow player is going to attempt his hunt for the ring. Shadow player has 3 eyes in the hunt pool, so they'll be rolling 3d6 for this attempt. And we'll make the roll, and the Shadow player is looking for 6s. And they have no success, 2 3s and a 5. So the character die will be placed in the hunt box, and that will modify future attempts, and that will complete the action for the Free Peoples. Shadow player has 3 action dice available, so we'll have him roll on the gaze table. +1 modifier is active. Rolled a 2, that's modified to a 3, so it's going to be military matters. So we're going to consult tables C and D to figure out what the Shadow player will do. First step is to consult table C, and we're going to find out where Sauron's focus is located. The roll is a 2, and that's going to be an Angmar or Ruin, with a primary objective of the Shire or Dale. All right. Now going through table D, the military priority chart, we begin with A. Use a muster die to bring a minion into play that adds an action die to the pool. Well, none of our minions can meet the prerequisites for bringing them into play, so we'll move on to the next step, and that's use a muster die to advance a faction within the focus region on the diplomatic track. All right, well, that is possible. We can either use a muster die to advance the Sauron, which would be up in the Mount Gundabad, Mount Graham, or Angmar region, or we can use that to advance the Southrons and Easterlings. And when we have a 50-50 chance like this, what we do is just select whichever option we want to do out of the 2. And in this case, I think we'll spend the muster die as a diplomatic action, and we'll get Sauron to war. So we'll spend that muster die, and we're going to move Sauron to the at war box. Back up to the Free People's choice to play a action die. We each have 2, so we'll be forced to play one. We have a Will of the West and a muster die. Now we have this I Will Go Alone card that we could play using the Will of the West die. That says play if at least 1 companion is in the Fellowship. Separate 1 companion or 1 group of companions from the Fellowship. You may move the companions 1 extra region and then heal 1 corruption point. Well, we don't have any corruption at this point, but that would give us an extra move to separate those companions. It's something we could think about. The other option is to use a muster die for a diplomatic action. And I think we're going to do that. Well, the Shadow player is now at war, so he technically could be starting his movements towards Gondor or the Elves. So I think what we'll do is we're going to use a muster die and have a diplomatic action, and we'll move the Elves down one box closer to the at war box. Alright, the Shadow player is up next, and we'll consult Sauron's gaze table. Here is the roll, +1. Rolls an 18, that's a 19, and he is going to do his focus will be centered on reacquiring his ring. Well, going through the ring priority chart, we're back at E, and that is to use an action die to position Nazgul or armies into regions that are likely to gain future hunt rerolls. We do have an army die available, and I think we're going to use that to maneuver some forces. So we're going to play an army die, and that will allow us to move 2 armies. And as long as we fulfill a portion of what our priority chart was requesting, we've fulfilled our obligation to Sauron. We're basically acting as Sauron's lieutenant, or lieutenant, I should say. So I think for the first part of this, we will move 1 army from Moria into Holland, and that will attempt to get a reroll in that location if the Shadow or if the Free Peoples attempt to move through Moria. We fulfilled our action there, so we can use that army die to move another army on the board somewhere, and I think we will do that in Mordor. And I think what we'll do is we're going to move all those forces in Barad-dûr, and we'll move them into the plains of Gorgoroth, and that will combine with the 3 armies that were there, producing a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 regulars and an elite. And now back to the Free Peoples. We have a Will of the West die, and we could use this I Will Go Alone. That's a possibility. The die can actually be used for anything, so our options would be diplomatic actions. We could use it as an event to play an event card or draw an event card. Those are all possibilities. And I think I'd rather play this I Will Go Alone card once we get some corruption. That would make that card more valuable to us. So I think what we'll do is we're going to play this Will of the West die as a muster die. And that will allow us to do a diplomatic action. I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to use that die as a muster die, and I think we're going to do a diplomatic action. Our choices, we can move any of the political markers, but to me the most likely would be the elves or Gondor. And Gondor is still inactive. The elves are active at the present time, but it would get them closer to the at war box, and it's kind of a hard decision. I think I'll move Gondor. We'll move Gondor down 1. That'll put them within 1 of the at war box, and then any attack on Osgiliath or Pellagar will activate them, and we would be able to start mustering troops in Gondor. So I think we'll do that. And now it's the Shadow player. He's down to his last die, and as a part of the solo rules, when you are down to your last action die for the round, you don't roll on the tables. You will use this to best effect anywhere on the board, and this is a way that we can correct for things that can't be necessarily placed into the table, like unusual actions. Like, say for an example, if there was a Free People's army closing in on Angmar and they didn't have any troops up there, we could muster troops there to help defend Angmar. So we're going to use this character die to best effect. And I think what we'll do for the Shadow player, he's going to use a character die and move an army with a character. So we're going to have the Nazgul in Dal Guldur lead his army towards, I think, Lorien. So we'll take everything in here and place it, with the exception of 1 garrison. We'll place that in North Anduin Vale. I like the selection of North Anduin Vale because it gives us the opportunity, it's the same distance to get to Lorien, whether we used South Anduin or North Anduin, but the North Anduin location allows us to go after Carrick or the Woodland Realm or Dale. So that's what we've done. So all of the action dice for both sides have been played. That'll complete our action resolution phase. We would move on to the victory conditions. None of the sides have any victory points, so we'll begin another round. All right, we're going to start turn 2. Each side is going to reclaim their dice. No one received any extra dice last turn, so we'll have 4 dice for the Free Peoples and 7 for the Shadow Player. Shadow Player will have to place at least 1 die in the hunt box because we had a character die in the hunt box from last turn. Free Peoples draw their event cards. They have Therein Back Again, a power too great, and speed greater than any wind. And we draw the 3 event cards for the Shadowbot. We'll keep those unseen. Fellowship's last known position is in Rivendell, and the progress marker is currently at 1. There is no corruption. And we'll leave Gandalf as the guide for the moment. So far on the political track, we have Sauron at war, and we've got Gondor moving within 1 space of the at war box, but they're not active yet. Now it's the hunt allocation phase, and we'll consult table A and roll a die. We have a +1 modifier. Roll is a 6, that's modified to a 7, and we'll be placing 1 eye in the hunt box. And now it is our action dice roll phase. Free Peoples have an event die, muster die, and 2 character action dice. All right, and now we'll make the roll for the Shadow Player. And the Shadow Player rolls, that's a cock die, we'll re-roll that one. Okay, the Shadow Player rolls 1 eye, which we will add to the hunt box. That puts 2 eyes in there. He's got an army, muster army, 2 character dice, and a muster die. All right. Free Peoples player are up first for the action rounds. These are the dice and cards that we have. And I think we're going to play this Power Too Great card. Play on the table. Advance the Elven Nation 1 step on the political track. While this card is in play, the Shadow Player cannot move an army into or attack either into a normal battle or siege in Lorien, Rivendell, or the Grey Havens. Shadow Player can force a Power Too Great to be discarded by using any 1 action die and discarding an army and character event card from his hand. Okay, so we're going to do that. I'm going to use a event die to play that, and we'll be able to use Gandalf's power to draw another card. So the elves are going to move 1 step down the track, and then we're going to have that card play on the table. So that card plays on the table. It'll be active until it's canceled. And now we're going to use Gandalf's ability to draw another card from the same deck, and that is from the strategy deck. And he draws the card, The Last Battle. Play on the table if Aragorn is with a Free People's army in a region outside of a Free People's nation. All right, so we'll add that to our tableau of cards, and the Shadow Player's up next. And Sauron will begin by rolling on his gaze table. There is a +1 modifier active. The roll is a 1, that's modified to a 2, and it's going to be military matters. We'll make another roll and find out where Sauron's focus is located. And he rolls an 11, and that's Isengard. All right, these are the dice that we have available to us for Isengard. And going through a Table D military priorities chart, it says use a muster die to bring a minion into play that adds an action die to the pool. Well, we can't do that. Isengard is currently not at war. Use a muster die to advance a faction within the focus region on the diplomatic track. That we can do. The Shadow Player will play the muster die, and we're going to advance Isengard to the at war box. All right, these are the cards and dice that we have available to us. I think we have 2 character dice, so I think we were going to use one of those to get the Fellowship moving. We're going to use a character die to advance the Fellowship. That'll move that up to a level of 2. And now the Shadow player will make his hunt roll. He's got 2 dice in the hunt box. And here's his hunt roll. And he has 1 6. He's got a success. So we're going to be drawing a hunt tile from the bag. And we draw the tile, a 0 damage, but reveal. All right. So the free peoples are revealed. They've got 2 points that they can use to move the fellowship with. And I think we're going to move the fellowship 2 spaces south into Holland, through the fords of Brunnen and into Holland, where there is an orc patrol. Fellowship progress is reset to 0. They're still revealed, and we're going to place this die into the hunt box. And the hunt tile is discarded. All right, the shadow player has 4 action dice. We'll make a roll on Soren's gaze table. They are no longer in Rivendell, but they are revealed. So we'll be adding +2 to the roll because they're revealed. Rolls a 4, that's modified to a 6, and that's military matters again. So we'll make another roll and consult Soren's gaze table. Military table, and here's the D20. Rolls a 4, and that is Dol Guldur and Moria. Well, with the A Power Too Great card on the table, we're not allowed to attack any elven strongholds, so we've got to get rid of that. So that says we can play any action die and discard a character event and an army event from our hand. So I think that's what we'll do. I'm going to play a character die, and then we're going to randomly discard 1 character event and 1 strategy event card, and then we're going to be able to discard that A Power Too Great. And that's a rough card for the shadow player. That cost us a lot of resources, but we've at least dealt with the problem. We'll move back to the free peoples. Well, we need to hide the fellowship, so we're going to use a character action die, and we're going to hide the fellowship. So we can flip that hidden tile back to the hidden side, and we're currently hidden somewhere in the province of Holland. All right, the shadow player has 3 action dice, and we'll make a roll on the gaze table. There are no modifiers. The roll is a 20, and that is going to be Soren's gaze is turned back to the ring. First action is use a muster die to bring the Witch King, Chief of the Ring Wraiths, into play. And we're able to play that. Witch King, Chief of the Ring Wraiths. If the fellowship is not in an unconquered free people stronghold, you may use a muster action die result to play the Chief of the Ring Wraiths in the region containing the fellowship, or to replace the Black Captain in his current region. Well, we're going to play the muster army die to accomplish that. And we'll be placing the Witch King on the board in Holland, and we're going to gain a action die for next turn. So, the Witch King, Chief of the Ring Wraiths, is moved into Holland, and he is pursuing the Fellowship. In addition, we'll be placing an action die into the discard pile for use next turn. Free peoples have 1 action die left. It's a muster die, and I think what we're going to do is we are going to muster the Eagles of the Misty Mountains. If the Fellowship's last known position is not in Rivendell, or Gandalf the White is in play, you may use 1 muster or recruit faction die result to bring the Eagles into play. All right, so we will find out what happens with that. And that says, starting setup, we place 2 Eagles in Eagle's Eyrie. All right, and it's also going to get us a faction die to add to our pool. So we're going to place 2 Eagles in Eagle's Eyrie, which is in the northern part of the Misty Mountains. And we're going to gain a faction event die for Free Peoples, which is going to add an extra die to our dice pool, which is always a good thing. All right, Shadow Player is up next. Free Peoples have no dice left, so the Shadow Player is going to get 2 turns in a row. And we'll begin, we have 2 dice left, we'll begin with a roll on the Sauron's Gaze table. There's no modifiers to this roll. The roll is a 16, and that's going to continue his hunt for the ring. All right, we've already brought the Witch King into play, so we'll continue through the priority list. And it says play a character event that will target the Fellowship. So let's see what character events we've got here. We have the Nazgul Strike. Play if the Fellowship is on step 1 or higher of the Fellowship track. It is not, so we will not be able to play that card at this time. We'll move on to the next priority, and that says use an action or faction die to play a faction card that targets the Fellowship. All right, let's see what kind of faction cards we've got here. We've got Servants of Sauron and the Craft of Shelob. All right. Well, none of those cards can be used, really, because we can't make an attack on the Ring Bearer. We need to have those factions brought into the game first. So we'll continue on. It says use an action or faction die to play a faction card that... Oh, we've done that. Then it's D. If the Fellowship is not in a Free People stronghold, which is true, use an action die to move Nazgul and or armies into or towards the last known position of the Fellowship to gain hunt rerolls, or play an event die to draw a character event. Well, we're going to move some units into that area or near that area. Well, it appears that the Fellowship is going to be moving through the mines of Moria. They could also be taking the southerly path through the Gap of Rohan, but we're going to have to plan for this. We've already got a Nazgul and an army in Holland. So I think what we'll do is we're going to use a character action die, and we're going to make some movements with our minions. So I think what we'll do is redeploy the 2 Nazgul that we have north of their position. And we'll place one in Moria and another one in North Dunland. And that should help to give us some rerolls if the Fellowship moves through those areas. All right, the Shadow Player is down to his last die, so we don't have to roll on the tables. We can use that to any effect we want, and we'll kind of examine these cards here and see what we've got. Strategy card is the Day Without Dawn. Play if all Shadow Nations are at war. Well, we haven't had that happen yet, so we can't do that. We have an army die available. And I think we're going to use that army die to move a couple armies and get them into combat positions. So we're going to play that army die, and I think we're going to move the forces in Minas Morgul into South Athelion. And that'll get us into a combat position with Osgiliath. And I think for the second action, we're going to move that force on the plains of Gorgoroth, and we're going to move them into Minas Morgul. And I think what we'll do, since there's so many there, we're going to replace that with an army marker. And so we're going to place those forces into the first army, and that'll free up a little space on the board. And that's going to be all of the faction dice. They're all spent. There'll be no victory point calculations. Nobody has any, so we'll move on to another round. Well, we'll begin by recovering our dice. Free Peoples ended up gaining a faction die. Shadow Player still has his normal 7 from the start. All right, Free Peoples will draw their event cards, and we ended up getting Horn of Gondor, the Red Arrow, and In Long Swift Lines. Okay. Shadow Player has drawn his cards. They're kept inverted. He has a total of 4 standard action event cards, and he's got 3 faction events. And we'll check our totals right now. We've got a total of 3 faction events and 6 standard events. So we're going to have to probably use these, otherwise we're going to be losing them in the near future. All right, next up is the fellowship phase. We're currently hidden in Holland, but we've got the Chief of the Ring Wraiths and an orc party searching for us. Progress track is at 0. We have no corruption. I think we're going to maintain Gandalf the Grey as the guide for the moment. Now the shadow player will make his roll on the hunt allocation table. Currently there is no modifier. The roll is a 10, and that is going to place 1 die into the hunt box. Now it's our action roll phase. Here is the Free People's roll. All right, they have a total of 2 muster die, 2 character dice, and a recruit faction die. All right. And here's the shadow player's roll. All right, he is going to be adding 1 additional eye to the hunt box. That'll give them 2. And he also has a muster army, muster, character die, and 2 army dice. All right, he's going to be pretty active this turn. All right, these are the cards and dice that we have available to us for this first round. And I'm thinking that we're going to move the fellowship first, and then depending upon if we are revealed or not, I'll use the other character die to play I Will Go Alone, and we'll be able to separate some of the members of the fellowship and maybe get them to Fangorn Forest. So we're going to play a character die, and we're going to advance the fellowship. That'll move us up to a progress of 1. And now the shadow player is going to make his hunt roll. Now he's going to get a couple rerolls now. He's got a Chief of the Ring Wraiths in the spot and an army, so he'll be getting 2 rerolls. And the Chief of the Ring Wraiths is considered a Nazgul for the search purposes. All right, he has 2 dice in the hunt pool. He'll be rolling 2 dice, and he gets 2 rerolls. Here's the roll. He's got a success, and we're going to re-roll that 4 in the event we draw an eye tile. And we didn't get it. Okay, but he has 1 success, so we'll be drawing a tile. And we draw the tile. It's a 3 damage. All right, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take Gandalf as the casualty. We'll take the guide as the casualty. He has a leadership value of 3, so that's going to absorb all of the damage. But Gandalf the Grey is no more. So Gandalf's figure is removed from the fellowship, and his card is also removed. And now Aragorn is going, I should say Strider, is going to take over as the guide. We'll have to remove Gandalf's token from the fellowship counters. And so Strider takes over as the guide. And now it is the shadow player's turn. He's going to roll on the gaze table. There is no modifier. Roll is a 9, and that's going to be military matters. We'll consult table C, the military table. Roll is a 3, and his focus is going to be in Dol Guldur and Moria. And we'll consult our military priority chart. First one is use a muster die to bring a minion into play that adds an action die to the pool. Well, we can do that because the Balrog of Moria could be brought in. And that reads, you may use a muster action die result to play the Balrog in Moria. If Moria is unconquered and not under siege, recruit 1 Sauron unit there advance the elves and dwarven nations one step on the political track. All right, so I think we will do that. We're going to use a muster die to accomplish that. All right, so we are going to place the Balrog in Moria. He's going to have a 0 leadership ability for the moment. And we're also able to bring in a Sauron regular there, and we're going to do that. We'll add a Sauron regular to Moria, and Balrog is going to also get his lesser minion die, which we're going to add to our dice pool for next turn. But this doesn't come without a cost. The elves are going to move down 1, and they move to the at war box. In addition, the dwarves are going to move down 1 box. Free Peoples are up again next, and we're going to use this character event, I Will Go Alone. Play if at least 1 companion is in the fellowship. Separate 1 companion or 1 group of companions from the fellowship. You may move the companions 1 extra step, then heal 1 corruption point. All right, we're going to use a character action die to play that card. And we're going to separate some people from the fellowship. And I've decided to separate out Legolas and Pippin. And we can move them a number of provinces up to a distance from the fellowship equal to the step number on the fellowship track, plus the highest companion level, plus 1 for the I Will Go Alone card that we played. So Legolas has a value of 2. We gain 1 from the fellowship track, and an additional 1 for the I Will Go Alone card, allowing him a movement of 4 regions. So we're going to move Legolas and Pippin 1, 2, 3, and 4 into the Fords of Isen. I would have liked to have gone through Moria, but when we enter a SP stronghold, we have to stop. So this way we can go around the Gap of Rohan and maybe help out the Rohan forces, and then eventually move into Fanghorn, where we can perhaps get the Ents moving. All right, the Shadow player is up next. He has 4 action dice to resolve, and we'll begin with a roll on the gaze table. No modifier. Roll is a 19, and that's going to be a hunt for the ring. We'll consult our ring priority chart, and we're going to go with B, play a character event that will target the fellowship. So we'll see what character events we have. And we've got Flocks of Creebane and the Nazgul Strike. All right, both cards can be played. Fellowship is currently on step 1 of the track. It says move any or all Nazgul. Then, if at least 1 Nazgul is in a region with the Fellowship, you may either discard 1 Free People's character event card from the table or roll for the hunt as if the Free People's player had moved the Fellowship. That seems like a pretty good card. The other one is Flocks of Creebane. Play on the table. Before you make a hunt roll, you may discard Flocks of Creebane to add 1 to all the dice on that hunt roll, including rerolls. You must discard this card from the table immediately if the Fellowship is declared in a Free People's city or stronghold controlled by the Free People's player. All right, let's see what we're going to do. I think we're going to play this Nazgul Strike. So we'll play a character die, and we're going to activate that. We've met the prerequisites, so it allows us then to make a hunt roll as though the Free People's player had moved. So let's do that. All right, so that card would allow us to move the Nazgul if we choose to. Well, we don't really know where the Fellowship is going to be moving, so I'll probably leave those Nazgul where they are. We already have one in the way of Chief of the Ring Wraiths in the space. So we will just leave it as we have it. We're going to make our hunt roll. There's 2 dice in the box. There is 1 character event die in the box as well. So we're going to be getting 2 rerolls, 1 for the army, 1 for the Nazgul, and a -1 for the character die. So let's make the roll. Okay, here's the roll with the +1 modifier. And we have failed. That would turn those both into 4s, so we'll get our reroll. And we failed. It's amazing. All right, no action for the Shadow player. That's too bad. Now we played the character event card Nazgul Strike. Now the Witch King has a special ability called Spear of Terror. If the Chief of the Ring Wraiths is in the region with the Fellowship, when you play a character event card, you may immediately draw another character event. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll draw the card and we'll keep that secret for the moment. The Nazgul Strike card is spent and discarded. And I think we're going to play this Riders of Theoden card. We're going to spend a muster die, and that's going to allow us to recruit one Rohan unit, regular or elite, and a leader in either Edoras or in a region containing a companion. All right. And it just so happens we have companions in the Fords of Isen. So we're going to play that Riders of Theoden card, and we're going to deploy a leader and I think an elite in the Fords of Isen. We'll take those out of the supply and add those to that location. All right, we're going to add an elite and a leader in the Fords of Isen. That's going to put up a very strong wall of defense there if Saruman ever gets moving. Now the Shadow player's up again next. He's got 3 action dice and we'll make the roll on the gaze table. There are no modifiers. Rolls a 9, and that's going to be a 6, and that's going to be military matters. So we'll make another roll and see where Sauron's focus lies. Rolls a 2, and that's Angmar or Ruin. And I think the best thing we can do is to, using our military priority chart, is B, use a muster die to advance a faction within the focus region of the diplomatic track. So that's what we're going to do. And in this case, Ruin, it'll be the Southrons and Easterlings. So I'm going to use a muster army die. And we're going to advance the Southrons on the diplomatic track, moving them to within 1 step of the at war box. Fellowship is up next. We have these dice and these cards available. Well, I think we're going to use this muster die, and we're going to use a diplomatic action with the dwarves. So we'll play that muster die as a diplomatic action, and we're going to move the dwarves down within 1 of at war. Unfortunately, they're still inactive, but they're at least 1 step away. Shadow player's up next, and we'll have him roll on the gaze table. Roll is a 6, and that's going to be military matters again. We'll see where his focus lies. Roll is a 16. That's going to be Mordor, with the target of Osgiliath. All right, our focus is in Mordor, and moving down the military priority chart, we get to use an action die to play a strategy event card that relates to the focus region. Let's see what strategy cards we have. All right, we have the strategy cards. The King is revealed, and the Day Without Dawn. All right, the only one we can play, we have 2 army dice, so we could play the Day Without Dawn. Play if all Shadow Nations are at war. Well, they are not yet, so we cannot play that card. We don't have a dice to play this one either, so we'll move down the priority chart. And that one is use an action die to attack the objective region. All right, that is Osgiliath, and we can do that. So we're going to play an army die, activating the forces in South Ithilien, and we're going to launch an attack against Osgiliath. I'll transfer these forces to the battle board, and we'll place a battle marker to mark where the 2 regions are, where we're attacking from and to. All right, the battle is ready to commence. We begin laying out the forces. Currently, the Shadow player has a force of 5. Free Peoples have a force of 2. They're in fortifications, so the attacker will only hit on a 6 during the first round. Now we can play combat cards. And I think the free peoples are going to play the combat card Daylight. The shadow player rolls a maximum of 3 dice during this combat. So he's going to remove 2 dice. Now we'll figure out if the shadow player is going to use a combat card. That's very simple. What we do is we take the total number of potential combat cards, mix those up, and we're going to roll a d6. And if the result is less than the total number of combat cards available, they will play a card. Shadow player has 4 combat cards available. We're going to roll a die. On a result of 1, 2, or 3, he'll play one. The result is a 4. He will not be playing a combat card. So we're going to make our rolls and see what happens. Here is the attack from the shadow player. He needs to have 6s during this first round. He rolls 1 hit. All right. Now the free peoples will defend with their 2 dice. He rolls no hits. All right. Now the shadow player is going to get a reroll for the Nazgul. That's what the red chip indicates. So we'll have him re-roll one of those dice. And that's still a failure. All right. So in this case, we have to take casualties. One of the Gondorian units will be removed from the game. And now we have to decide if we're going to stay or retreat. And I think the Gondorians will retreat. So the Gondorian forces will retreat. We have the choice of going into either Peligir, Lossarnach, or Minas Tirith. We could also go into the Druidan Forest, any space that is a free space that is adjacent. I think we'll put him into Minas Tirith. All right. Now, Sauron's forces can advance into Osgiliath. And I think they will do that. They're going to move all of their forces in. All right. All right, our final die is a recruit faction die. I can't bring any of the other factions into play with the prerequisites, but we can recruit for the Eagles of the Misty Mountains, and that's what we'll do. During recruitment, we can place 1 in Eagle's Eyrie. And we'll place another eagle in Eagle's Eyrie. Gives us a total of 3. Now those eagles, if we read our special rules here, it says that when a faction event card allows you to move all eagles, you may move all eagle figures in play anywhere on the board without restrictions. In Call to Battle, eagles that are within 4 regions from a defending army. Ignore mountain borders, move some or all of the eagles within range to the region with the battle. Okay. Shadow player's final die is up, so we won't be consulting the tables. We're going to use that army die to best effect. And we're going to use that army die to move 2 armies. I think we're going to move the first army into North Ithilien. I'm going to leave behind a garrison into Minas Morgul. So we'll place one of those regulars in that force, leaving that as a garrison there. And then the second army we're going to move is the one in Morannon. We'll move that to Dagorlad. And we'll leave 1 orc behind as a garrison. We don't want to have any free victory points for Free People's player. And that is going to complete the round. I have one correction to make in post-production. I noticed that when the shadow player reclaimed their dice at the beginning of this 3rd turn, I neglected to give them their 8th dice that they should have gotten from the entrance of the Witch King. So what we're going to do to correct this is I'm going to roll the die and we'll play out the die. If it ends up to be an eye, there's nothing that we'll be able to do about that. But if it's another face on the die, we'll run that out and play it out so that they have their full complement of dice. So we'll make the roll now. Okay, it is a muster die. So we'll play that muster die out, and I'll do this as though this was the final die selection for the turn. So we'll play it out anywhere in the map. And I think what I'll do is I'll use that as a diplomatic action, and we'll move the Southrons to the at war box. And then that will make the correction for the missing that dice. I usually use this container to keep the spent dice in, and that's a good way for me to remember which dice should be in the dice pool. But unfortunately, I had a die off the side here in Gorgoroth, and I didn't see it, and I didn't add it into my collection of spent dice. And then when I reclaimed them, I only had 7 in there, so that was the mistake. And I think we're going to end the video here. We've gone through a total of 3 turns. These are the current conditions on the board. We've got the Fellowship in Holland. They're hidden and they have a progress of 1. We've managed to move a couple companions down to the Fords of Isen, and we've managed to reinforce that quite a bit. We've activated the Eagles in the Eagles of Ivory. We have 3 of those available. But the Shadow player has been active as well. He's deployed the Chief of the Ringwraiths and the Balrog. In addition, he's launched an attack and conquered Osgiliath. He's also moved out a large army onto the plains of North Ithilien. So far, he's managed to activate Sauron and Isengard. We've activated and advanced the elves to war, and I almost forgot, Gondor should have been activated and moved to the at war box because they were attacked. The attack on Osgiliath. So thanks for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. This will conclude episode 1 of my playthrough of War of the Ring using my Alone in Middle-earth rule set. Please join me again next time for our next episode where we'll see if the Free Peoples can win the game of War of the Ring. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a nice evening. Good night.